Hello, hello, hello. It's your girl, Tiara Nicole Riley, your career coach. So, we have talked about your resume, we've talked about your job search process. Today, I want to get into the nitty gritty of the interview process. So, let me start by saying, wherever you're struggling to get through the process, there's a couple of stages, right? Stage one, I would say, is like the phone screen process. Stage two is the interview process. Stage three, you might be getting to that final interview, but just not getting an offer, right? And then, of course, the goal is to get an offer and negotiate and all those things. And so we'll talk about that. So in this process, I'm going to talk about stage two, which is the interview process, and how you can go about making yourself stand out in this process. Now, in the interview process, there are a couple of things that I want you to be mindful of. So let's start with the phone screen. So that's the step one, actually. So step one is the phone screen. Couple of things. Typically, when you have a phone screen scheduled, you pick the time. Typically. Right? So either you got a link sent to you or, they gave you some options and you were like, this is the time that works. Be available when they call. Please. Now, I like myself, I don't like random phone calls either. So, the whole silence unknown calls feature stays on my phone until I have a scheduled call. You don't know what number they're going to call from, so turn that feature off. Hello, do your best to be available when they call. Couple of things that have turned me off in the phone screen process is when I call you and you're either annoyed that somebody is calling, right? Like you can hear it in their voice. Unavailable. So when I say, is this still a good time to speak? That's a rhetorical question. The answer should be yes. You pick the time. You pick the time. Or if you're like busy or it's a loud background or I can hear that you're driving. Like if we have a scheduled call, I just need you to be available for that call. I really do. I really, really do. I really, really do. So that's step one. Step two, I want you to have done some research on the company. Have your information prepared in advance. So one thing that I do that helps me is I have an interviews note document. So first of all, I'm very organized. I'm type A, but it might help you, okay? So within my computer, I have a folder where I keep like my resume, like my professional folder. Within that folder, I have an interview prep folder. Each job that I have interviews, whether it's a phone screen, video, in person, whatever, if I get to an interview stage with the company, I create a folder for them. Now, once I go through that process and maybe the answer is no, then I put in a folder called past interviews so that it doesn't get like busy in that folder. And that also helps me keep track of like, who do I need to follow up with? I haven't heard from this company in a while. Like, let me, circle back, send a follow-up message, see what's going on, right? So in the company's folder, so I do the company name and the title of the position that I'm going for. Within that folder, I screen print the job description so that I can always reference that. And then I have a document that I create called interview notes. I update this with every interview. Okay, the reason being, you don't want to ask the same questions. They all share information. You don't want to, not be able to reference and recall information. Don't rely on your memory, particularly if you're doing multiple interviews with multiple companies in any given week. But 5 minutes before any interview, but especially the phone screen, 5, maybe 15 minutes, you want to take the time to really dig into the company, look at their website, jot down a couple things that you want to be able to talk about, some questions that you might have after looking at their website, etc., right? Know who you're talking to. Right? Another thing you definitely want to do is always have questions. Always have questions. Always have questions. And I typically write out like 5 to 7 questions because if you have a really thorough recruiter, they might get through those questions before it's time for you to ask your questions. The worst thing you can do is when they say, do you have any questions? Your answer should never be no. Ever. And if your answer is no, don't tell them I'm your career coach. Don't say that lie with me, honey. Don't say that lie, honey. Don't say that lie. Do not have questions. So you always want to do some research on the company that you're speaking to. You always want to have some questions lined up. Be pleasant. Be a bright part of their day. Get to know the recruiter a little bit. So typically when you're on a phone screen, the first person is HR. Your questions should be about the position, maybe the benefits that might be available. You can ask about the compensation. These are your HR-centered questions, right? All of your questions should be tailored to who you're speaking to. Okay? Let's start there, right? Like, don't just ask any question. Make sure your questions are pointed and lined in the direction of who you're trying or who you're speaking to. Do a little research and basic research, right? Like if you can Google them or look them up on LinkedIn, that's what I mean by basic research. Don't go digging. But maybe you went to the same college, maybe you had the same degree, maybe you're from the same area. Like, come up with things that you can kind of speak to a little bit. And if you don't have anything, it's okay. But just help you build that rapport with the first person you're speaking to. My last couple of interviews I've had, they have made a point to say, this is the most enjoyable interview I've had in forever. Energy matters. It matters, okay? You want to leave a positive impression. And not that you want to assimilate per se, but you want to pick up on the natural cues of the person you're speaking to. Like if you have somebody who, is trying to crack a little jokey joke and cracking jokes is part of your energy, go for it, right? If you have somebody who's like, I want to focus on facts and like just pick up on the energy that they're putting down. Don't change your personality, but show the parts of the personality that seem to align with the energy that you're getting. If they sound like they're just having a bad day, make their day brighter. Crack a little, give them a little reason to smile, give a little sprinkle. You know what I mean? Make the energy fun. A lot of times when we're hiring for these positions, we have 20 calls in a given day. Be the call I remember. Be the call I remember. Be the call I remember. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some other steps in the next couple of videos where we talk about the other parts of the interview. But this is something that you can do for all of the steps. Thank you emails are a thing. If you have their email address or maybe they reached out on LinkedIn, hey, just want to say thank you for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you. That's it. Just the nicety. Just the nicety. That's it. But in the next video, we're going to talk about that first interview. So we just talked about the phone screen. Next, you're going to have either a video or in-person interview. And there are some things that I want you to be mindful of in that process. But in the meantime, if you have questions, drop them in the chat and I'd be happy to discuss. Thanks, guys.